Some Republicans in our era already facing backlash over the tax bill. Now, these 5 House members, they voted no, largely because it gets rid of deductions for state and local taxes. Now, you can see how much people would lose in each of the districts. Congressman Lee Zeldin, for example, on Long Island, he was one of the faces on that map. He voted no, and that caused House Speaker Paul Ryan to cancel a fundraiser he was going to hold for Zeldin on the island. Republicans could also take a hit to the wallet. That if they don't support it. Chris Collins, a Republican representing Western New York, says donors have told him to vote yes or they won't take his calls. He actually said that publicly. Republicans, they're in a spot here. A yes could hurt them in the ballot box. A no could hurt them in their donor base and their political standing within the party. Now, if this passes, will it come back to bite the GOP? Let's bring in our panel. Richard Brodsky, former Democratic New York State Assemblyman from Westchester, professor at NYU. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Scott Vanderhoff, former 5-term Canada Out Andrew, Rockland County Executive, co-chairman of the Palisades Institute at Dominican College, and Andrew, who you met already. Scott, put yourself in John Fasso's shoes, or Lee Zeldin's, or any of the guys that we mentioned out there. You can be sure that between now and next November, if this thing passes, whether they voted yes or no, whether it's 15, 18, 20 grand, whatever it is for that particular district, they're going to lose people in deductions. People will be reminded of that number 100 times. What do they do? I mean, they voted no. There's nothing more they can do legislatively here, but they're in a spot.
They're in a terrible spot. And the rock and the hard place is mild compared to what really is. As a matter of fact, John Faso is already being attacked for having voted yes when he voted no. And you know, this is why I love the legislative process, because these votes for people, it just gets too confusing. Which vote did you do on the health care, and then you went over here, and this one, of course, is bad for New York State. It's very simple. This is a bad bill for New York State. The Senate bill being worse than the House bill. Because of the deductions primarily. There are a lot of other issues there. But from a political point of view, this is one of the most difficult things. And I have to guess that every congressman from this state, except for Collins perhaps, is sleepless.
You know, Dom, it was clear. What Collins said might have been not astute politically to go say that on record here, that, hey, my donors tell me I got to do this. But it's so patently obvious. They've gone, you can blame the president for it, but at the end of the day, the Republicans are the ones, and Democrats too next year, they got to run. And they got to run on their record, or they got to run where we are right now. And they have no victories to really show for the past year. Now, again, they can blame the president all they want privately, and maybe even publicly between next year, might be the calculation. But is something better than nothing? Even though I contend, and people are going to argue me it's too dense or whatever, I contend, not just in New York and New Jersey, but the details of this, and there's some vindictive stuff in this piece of legislation. We mentioned the school teachers, but other stuff too. It's already only 30% approve of it, if you believe the national polls. It's not going to be a legislative bonanza for them, but at least they can say they did something. Is that better?
Well,
is passing a bad bill better?
The way you set this up, I'm with you 1,000%. If I'm an elected official from the great state of New York, I would rather have no legislative agenda for year one under Trump than go with this tax cut plan. Because one, as Andrew and you talked about in the last segment, it's not going to save any money. And as soon, you might be able to escape for a little while, but as soon as the district and voters in your district catch on to what's exactly in this, we could write the commercial right now that's going to run against these Republican elected officials like John Faso. If he didn't support this, I mean, if he didn't oppose it, he could kiss his term goodbye.
And he did, to be fair. Right. But Richard, I think this goes beyond just the audience we're reaching. I think if you go in Wisconsin and everything else, listen, it's never a pretty process assembling a big bill here, but politically now, just politically, not morally, I still, and I've said this for the last 2 days, I don't get why they're doing what they're doing. And I'm not naive, but for me, to go, in the last week, they have gone so far to helping out the corporate community.
I can explain why.
He was a populist. He ran as a...
I can explain why without a lot of difficulty. Their base wants this. Now, their base is 33% of the country.
Wait. But I thoroughly disagree with that in this. In Alabama right now, all right, Joe Smith, okay, who's making as a household 50 grand, okay? Joe Smith could be one of the 13 million who's going to lose health insurance. Joe Smith isn't going to be seeing a huge tax break. His kids are going to be hurt when it comes to the school.
No, you're arguing why it's bad, and I agree with you.
But why do you think the base wants to help out their boss?
Because the base wants massive tax cuts. They want to defund the federal government. They want to be able to declare a victory. I'm not for it.
No, I know that. But I'm saying something different. Why didn't Trump do the following? Why didn't he just say, you know what? I'm not beholden to the elite. I'm not beholden to even the donor class. I'm going to say, everybody making 150 grand or less, I'm going to give you a $10,000 tax cut, period. Now, forget that the math doesn't add up and everything else.
That's not who he is. The fact of the matter is he had an easy way to do that. He could have just dealt with carried interest.
Right.
They didn't do it. Your question was why? Well, because the base wants it. They're not stupid people. They're people who have a social vision that says if it's...
You don't think they'd rather have 10 grand in their pocket more than what this thing has?
Trump is beholden to the base. He is beholden to the conservative Republican movement because based on his other social...
But I disagree with this premise that that's
based on his other social positions, if he all of a sudden starts playing Santa Claus with the middle class and the lower class, then he's not going to get Democrats to vote for him, and then he'll have lost all his Republican votes. And he is beholden to it, and the base wants it because the base is convinced that Saint Ronald Reagan was right. Tax cuts at all times are always a good thing. They always help the economy, and they don't. And all they have to do is go to Kansas, and they can find out what the impact is.
The base never cared, for example, about the estate tax. Okay? They don't. You'll never convince me that they really are concerned that Donnie Jr. and Eric have to pay taxes on what they inherit. I don't buy that for a second. The base didn't want the teacher going in her own pocket to buy school supplies to lose that as a deduction.
There is no real deep consciousness of the level of detail that you're diving into. That's right. The fact of the matter is, big tax cuts, we like them. That's where the base is. The details, we'll worry about it later. And it's either cynically or smartly, the bad news doesn't come in 2018. It comes in 2020, 2024, and 2027.
And that's when there'll be a tax hike and programs that people say they don't like about government until they realize it's theirs.
Trump won't be president in 2027.
In 2020?
I don't think so.
Okay. Up next, this has been one of the wildest weeks yet in the White House, and that says a lot. Now, even a member of the British Parliament is saying that the president is either incompetent or just a racist. That after he retweeted anti-Muslim videos from the UK. We'll take a look at that flap, what it's all about, and what is going on with this president.